going down, Ellipsis podcast fam? We are back, we are loud, and we are proud, and you already know what it is. We are back with day 5, week 3. Oh, is it week 3 or week 4, y'all? Oh my gosh, I think it's week 4. I don't even know. Is it week 4? We gonna go with week 4. It is week 4 of our relationship goals series. And if you have not already listened to the last 4 podcasts on relationships, go back, listen, and just melt in all of the wonderful things that surround our relationships and the things that we want for our lives and the things that God wants for our lives. Just go and indulge and take some notes and just take those nuggets that were dropped, because I believe that God is really doing something amazing for all of us. And today we are, of course, diving into something I think is really fun, but also serious at the same time. But we're talking about meals versus snacks today. Okay, so we need to know the difference. You know, of course, you have the 80-20 rule. A lot of people know about that, but some don't. So we're just going to dive into those little details today. And so if you have not already, go ahead and grab those notebooks, those pens, those snacks, that popcorn, that comfy seat in those comfy pajamas, because you already know it's about to get good. So diving right into meals versus snacks, one of the biggest things is you want to write down your top 3 non-negotiables. Okay, so this is because we all have the list, of course, you know, and if you remember from the last podcast, I talked about how you have the list, but once you make the list, you need to become everything on that list that you're asking for and be the best representation of yourself that you're looking for in your spouse, but for yourself. And moving on from that, when you have when you're looking for a real relationship and you're really wanting something that is going to last a lifetime, you're wanting this to end in a beautiful marriage or just a new beginning of a fresh longevity relationship that's going to, build up into that, you want to have 3 non-negotiables. So some of those non-negotiables could be, okay, he has to have a solid foundation with God, or he has to make this amount of money, or he has to, have this type of relationship with his mom, a great relationship with his mom, or a great relationship with his dad, or a great relationship with his kids, things like that. What are your 3 non-negotiables? And moving from there, a lot of times, we'll meet a really amazing guy, because I think it's happened to a lot of us, where we meet these really awesome guys and these awesome women, and they are a whole package, but we feel like they're just not our package. But they have everything that we want, but there's that one thing missing. So they have 80% of everything that you've prayed for, and that one little 20% they're missing. So that could be, I don't know, they're too tall, or or you feel like they're not skinny enough, or they're not thick enough, or all these little small details that kind of, a lot of times for us, throw really amazing people out the window because we miss the bigger picture. And one thing that I want to say in the midst of this, because a lot of us are going through different things like this, to where it's like, oh man, like, she's everything. Oh man, he's everything. But it's that one thing I just don't like. Now, out of everything that you pray for, and that one little thing, and it's not a big thing, it's small, that 20%, you have to think about, all right, versus somebody who has the 20% but missing the 80%. A lot of times we'll go after the relationships that have the 20%. And think that the 80% can make up the 20%. You have to understand, okay? You have to be a whole person first. So you can't take a 20% of a man, or 20% of a woman, take the 80% of that you have in yourself, and make up 100%. That's one person. You carrying the whole relationship, child. You are carrying the whole relationship. Because 80 plus 20 is 100. When you're walking in with somebody, it needs to be 80, 80. And then that 20% and that 20%, that's the extra, the bonus, okay, we can do without, but if she don't have it, it's all right. What is considered in that 20%? That would be like, okay, you know what? She got 80% of what I want, but that 20%, I'ma just, this is, in that 20%, this is what I'll be all right with. But the thing is when it comes to purpose and when it comes to God thrusting you into an area that requires you to have a certain spouse, that requires you to have, a certain relationship, God is going to win every single time. And you have to open your eyes and say, okay, God, give me the vision to see more of this, because he has everything that I want. And now, don't get me wrong, not everybody is going to have, not everybody who has that 80% or has that godly, a package is always going to be your spouse, because you're going to meet amazing people. Okay. There's a lot of 80s out there. There's a lot of people who, are growing in God and have these wonderful personalities and characteristics, etc. But when it comes to the person that you feel like God has called out for you, when it comes to that person that's like, God has put to the side, and you've met a lot of 80s in your life, but this 80 is just different. Okay. But they're missing that 20%. Oh my gosh, they're heavy set, or they're skinny, or they're too tall, or they're too short, or they live in a different city, or, their parents aren't married. Things like that. And you have to really sit and pray and ask God for guidance in creating this part, but really sitting and saying, okay, what is the 20% that they don't have, right? That I'm willing to live with the rest of my life. And once you do that, it will make things a lot easier. It will make things a whole lot easier, because now in that 20%, now that you know what that 20% looks like for you, now it's God. You give it to God and say, okay, God, now, to be honest with you, is God always gonna, appease us and what we want? No, because he knows what we need, but in the midst of that, at least you've done your part and you let God do the rest. But the thing is that a lot of times we jump into these relationships where it's like, oh my gosh, he is physically everything I've always wanted, or she is physically everything I've always wanted. He has the height, the looks, the details, the money, the car. He has everything. But and that's the, and it's like, but and a lot of us are willing to settle with that because they just look so good to the eye. So even if at the end of the day things aren't going to be, that core godly relationship that you want when it comes to having a spouse that you can walk in purpose with, at least from the outside, from the eye, it looks good to where people won't look any deeper. All they're going to see is the physical. So I can at least make people think that I got it all because she looks this good, or think that I have it all because he looks this good. And people are going to take a bird's eye view, or a bird's eye view of what's going on, and not look deeper into my life and my relationship and things like that. And so, and for some people who are not spiritually in tune, yeah, that's the case. But when it comes to things that you're walking in together in your purpose, it's always going to come out. And a lot of times, we'll get into those relationships and the women are like, oh my gosh, girl, your man is beautiful. I don't understand how you're not happy. Or the guy's like, man, dog, she's gorgeous. I don't understand what's going on. Like, why are you acting up? Like, what's the problem? Like, I don't understand. Because they're missing the 80%. And that 80 plus that 20 equals that one person, and you've been carrying a relationship, and you didn't let God step in, and you said, you know what, I'm gonna take this 20 over this 80, and you know, I'm gonna just complete the 80. Now, can that work for some people? Sure, it can work for some people, but ask those people if they're tired. Ask those people if praying and carrying the family through hard times because they know how to do it, but their spouse does not. And they're having to pray and carry and do everything on their own with God, on their own, because they don't have a spouse to pray with, because they don't have a spouse to war with, because you chose to pick the 20% over the 80%. So let me ask you again. You run into that woman, you run into that man with the 80%. She can pray her behind off. He can lead his behind off. He makes this much. She makes this much. Her family is awesome. His family is awesome. But she too tall, or she too short, or he's heavy set, or he's too skinny, or he lives in a different city and I don't like doing long distance. At the end of the day, when it comes to the work and the leadership that you guys have to do together, that little 20% is going to dissipate. Let me tell you. Because when you're with a great woman and when you're with a great man, and you have somebody that can lead, and you have somebody that can pray for you and blow the house down and go to a war room, close the door, and everything be fixed in a couple of weeks because your wife or your spouse, you know, has been warring for you behind closed doors. Everything is taken care of. That little 20% not gonna mean nothing. But of course, sit down and write the list of what you want your 20% to be. What's something that you're willing to live with the rest of your life. If she could pray the house down, if he can lead his behind off, I think we'd be all right living with that 20%. I think we'd be all right living with that 20%. Because the thing is that we don't think about how it's literally going to make up the things that they are going to lead in, the things that they're going to show you when you guys get married and when the relationship blossoms and when you guys start bouncing off of each other spiritually and you start moving and running together for your purpose separately and together. All of a sudden, things start working so well. You're learning from him. He's learning, she's learning from him, or he's learning from you. And you guys are building each other in the midst of that quote unquote lack of 20%. You're literally making up for that in different ways. And now, not only are you guys completely whole, there's the oil of anointing that is on you both is just overflowing. Because you chose to go ahead and let God move through the rest, even though the 20% was not there. You hear what I'm saying? And so the next question is, how do you determine the 80%? Okay, so you make that full list that I told you to make, and of course you become that list. But within that list, you create your 80%. So what on that list is that 80% for you? And let the 20% be the things that you can live with the rest of your life that they do not have off of this list. Okay, so when you're creating that 80%, think about, okay, I want them to ensure that their relationship is amazing with God. I want to ensure that within that we have, a covering for our family, or that their family is a praying family, etc. But also, when you're creating this 80-20 and you are picking a spouse, because I mentioned that you're going to meet a lot of different 80s who have 80% of what you want. But the thing is now we're looking at purpose. and how our purposes coincide with each other. So now you're sitting there making the list, determining what your 80% is. In the 80%, you're looking at, okay, God, what do I need in the midst of my purpose? So while I'm walking in what you've told me to do, okay, and I'm being obedient, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, my covering, okay, because as a spouse, of course, God covers us, but when you have a kingdom spouse, they're supposed to cover you. What is it that you need in the midst of working in your purpose? That needs to be in your 80%. Can they provide those needs that you need to carry you while you're walking in your purpose to ensure that they have your back? Then, after you determine that, you put that in your 80%. Now it's okay, because you have to understand your purposes will not be the same. But eventually, what's going to happen is God is always going to eventually cross those roads to where God puts people in those spouses in your life to be able to carry you through the things that He needs you to do. So the key to this is figuring out, what are my needs in the midst of my purpose? How can they carry me? And do they have that? That needs to be in your 80%. Then it's, okay, of course, financials, background, family background, making sure they have a good family, etc. That needs to be in your 80%. And that will dwindle down the things when it comes to making a decision, when it comes to, of course, praying to God and asking Him, God, is this my husband? I don't know. God, is this my wife? Okay, I did my part, God. Let me look at my list. My 80%. I'm doing this in my life. I'm touring here, or I'm traveling here. I'm doing this business right here. How is she covering me? How does she have my back? What are some of the things that she has that I know in the midst of me walking in my purpose, she can cover me in? Okay, because God is always the core in our relationships, but when you have that kingdom spouse, I'm telling you, that has your back, man, okay? I'm telling you, at the end of the day, that's all that's going to matter. That 20% is going to mean nothing. I keep saying that. It's going to mean nothing. And one of the things that I want to discuss, and this is the last thing, is with that 20%, the problem is that when we jump into these relationships that only have 20% of what we're looking for off of our list, it literally, we start to look for the other 80%. And that's where cheating comes in. That's where emotional cheating comes in. Physical cheating comes in. That's where all these different things come in, because we are trying to make up the other percentages of this 80% that they don't have, because we chose the 20% with the looks and the money and the car and all that, because the physical outside looked good. So we chose that 20%. But the thing is that we find a woman who can pray. So that makes up a 20%. So now that's 40%. Then we find another woman or man that knows how to lead and controls things well and can fix things. That's another 20%. Then you have another woman that can cook and clean and do all this stuff. That's another 20%. And you find yourself making up one woman by making all these mistakes and cheating with all these men, all these women, all because you're trying to make up for the 80% that they do not have. And it leads you down a path that just becomes long and drawn out. And we don't have time for that. So avoid that. Avoid choosing 20%. and go after the 80%. It might take a little longer. It might be a little bit more, harder to find. But you know what? When it comes to picking a spouse that you're going to be with the rest of your life, the 80% is all that matters. So make that 80%. Make that list. Make the list. Become the list. And make sure when you are making that list with the 80%, you are remembering how in my purpose does she or he support me, carry me? How can they have my back? Write that in the list. What do I need to walk in the purpose that God is telling me to walk in? What is something that I need? I need somebody to pray for me. I need somebody to be able to cook for me. I need what is it? Because I'm traveling all the time. I need somebody to create a home for me. What are those things? And can they provide those things towards your purpose? And then look at you and go, how can I help with their purpose? Can I provide the things that they need from me? So when you are looking for that kingdom spouse, sit down and ask, what do you need from me to support you in the walk that God is walking you down? What do you need from me? And genuinely have a mature conversation and figure out, can I be the things that she needs? Can I be the thing that he needs? Do I have those qualities? And it's a real question. And, some people might like to avoid it, but it is a real conversation that has to happen, because during these times, there's no more time to waste time. We don't have time to waste time anymore. Decisions need to be made. Okay? The enemy is moving and we need to move faster. Like, there's no time for avoiding serious questions and conversations and, walking around the daisies in the bushes, taking our time looking at the leaves, taking 50 million years. We don't have time for that. It is about kingdom relationships. This is about, kingdom purpose and kingdom time. And we are on kingdom time right now. And we don't have time to be lollygagging, trying to choose 20% when we need to find the 80% and keep it moving, because the enemy is coming hard and we need to come harder. Okay, so in the midst of you finding yourself, in the midst of you walking in your purpose for yourself and your singleness, when you're ready to jump into that relationship, know that it's coming, because God is not playing and he needs kingdom relationships together so we can take back these cities, okay, in droves. All right, so if you're with it and if you got it, go ahead and make that list, become the list, and find that 80% in your kingdom spouse, and we gonna get it popping, because it's time to rise up. Okay, so if you got it, I hope you enjoyed those nuggets. I hope you wrote it down. Go back and listen to it. We have one more week and another day. We're coming back tomorrow with it again. Monday, we are coming back with day 6 of our relationship series. So I love you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed and took some notes and had some nuggets to drop. And I hope you guys tune in tomorrow at the same time, 7:30 p.m. And we are going to get it popping like we always do. You have been listening to the Ellipsis podcast with Deja Terry. And I will catch you tomorrow night in the next one. Bye, guys. And remember, don't go after the 20%. Go after the 80. Bye, guys.